Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today we welcome Guy, president of SmartSense. Welcome to the show, Guy.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's amazing.
I am excited to get into things today. This is something that we've touched on a little bit in the past, and that's different IoT devices. But today we're really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of it, and I'm really excited for it. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and how you got started with SmartSense.
So before SmartSense, I was head of software and hardware at Zebra Technologies. And that was actually my first interaction with IoT and combining software with hardware. Before that, I was building up a company called Profitect that was working with retailers and supply chain for prescriptive analytics, basically just saying, hey, we send Excel spreadsheets, doesn't mean anything. How about we'll just tell them what they need to do and guide them and then optimize the outcome. And so Zebra Technology decided to acquire Profitect. And this is how I came to Zebra. Fell in love with IoT overall and combining software and hardware. And so I ended up leading SmartSense.
I love that you started on just Excel sheets that were sent to people because I have long since said that, it's time. It is time to stop running our supply chains on Excel. Don't get me wrong, I love Excel. It's a great tool and it still does have a place in the world. However, you should probably not be sending all of your shipment information just in batches to either your carriers, your brokers, or your logistics department and saying, yeah, if you could go ahead and manually enter all these in the system, that'd be great. Like, no, no, no. And like, I should not be getting updates on shipments just from an Excel sheet that I then go into the system and update. It's time, guys. It's time.
The major error that you see, the fat fingering called, and it's like you will have a truck going somewhere else, about 200, in a good day, 200 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah. Other times I've seen or I've had to fix pricing or try and fix hopefully get them to honor the contracted pricing when the shipment was typed in going from Kansas to Virginia and it was picked up Virginia to Kansas. And I said, I love this so much. And they're like, we aren't going to honor this. And I was like, I don't expect you to, but I have to ask just in case you do.
So this is the Excel spreadsheet nirvana, right? Why people love it? Because it's so easy to use. Well, one of the major risks is that whatever I see in Excel spreadsheet, you may see something totally different. Not just the from to, but there's so many numbers. And I'm not a number person. Let's say that my major was history, which was not. But I look at it and I'll take some other actions. And so Profitect was all about prescriptive analytics. How would we just tell them what they should do to optimize the outcome, and then it's much more defined.
Yes, I like I also selfishly, just as someone who is guilty of flip-flopping numbers because, that's who I am as a person. Um, I know it's my cross to bear. I like that you just remove the human error component because that's the most important part. It's
Yeah,
just getting the
people
human
wants
error
to
out.
they want to do the right thing. Everyone is proud of what they do, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise it would be silly, but they just need guidance. That's all.
Yeah. So kind of jumping into the I think I to me, I think that the industry that uses IoT devices the most is kind of the healthcare side because they have it's not like a pair of jeans. It's not going to be typically something in e-commerce where okay, if a batch of cookies gets a little thawed, they're still gonna be okay. Whereas healthcare, I feel like they have much more extremely stringent regulations, and they need to know exactly what temperature things are, any different variations of it, stuff like that. So, that being said, like, is that what you guys are seeing as well, that IoT devices are in huge demand in healthcare, or have I completely missed the boat and there's another industry that relies on them heavily?
So you're right. If you look at the history, regulation in healthcare came because of medication efficacy, right? If it's exposed to different temperature that is not by design was tested. Typically, whatever liquids, pills would not operate as defined, which means, uh, worst case, you can kill someone. And so the idea is, let's save lives every day. Let's put regulations on it, and let's track and trace condition monitoring across the supply chain from manufacturing all the way through clinics and even just, consumption, right? If we can. But on the food side, as you mentioned, the cookies will not, or the chocolate, let's take chocolate as an example. Well, the chocolate will still be safe to consume, right? So food safety is not an issue. But what about quality? So if you ever came into a grocery store and you saw an icicle on an ice cream, would you pick that up? And if you did, and you tried it at home, you may not like it because it has a different taste, and so you would not buy it again. So yeah, food safety is the most. So healthcare regulation critical, food safety as critical, food quality less critical. But you'll be surprised. A lot more companies are also cater to food quality as well, because there's a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, because if I go to the store and pick up a this is not a real example, this is just a fake example. If I go pick up a Haagen-Dazs and I get it and it's not that creamy texture that I'm used to, well, I'm probably not gonna go buy it again next time. I'm gonna swap for maybe the store brand or Ben& and Jerry's or literally the next direct competitor on the ice cream aisle, and that and it'll take an error on that company's part for me to say, "Well, maybe I'll go back and try this one. Maybe they were just having a bad day." But that could be a year from now or, next week, next time I go to buy ice cream. And that obviously, if I do it, I don't think either one of those companies are hurting. But if it happens to everyone that buys ice cream at my grocery store that day, well, suddenly that's a lot more than just me getting losing out on the $5 of me next time.
Absolutely, and so and you'll see more and more regulations, for both on the healthcare side and on the food side. We're still far from what Australia and Europe are actually regulated for food. I don't know if you saw Poison on Netflix, but it's a good documentary that speaks about the gap in the U.S. The administrative is relying on the person that cook to make sure that they cook it to the right temperature. So only Salmonella, E. coli will just die. Uh, but what if a kid is doing it and they're not that professional yet and they consume it? Uh, there's higher risk in the U.S. for consuming meat and other and vegetable and produce, than in Europe and in Australia for sure.
Well, that is utterly terrifying, and I will probably go watch that documentary and then be scared to eat out again.
Yeah, you'll just stop eating cantaloupe because they say it's the highest risk for for contamination. But we'll keep that for another podcast.
Alright, so since we said that the healthcare industry is the one kind of, moving away from getting salmonella when you go out, and, you said that the healthcare industry is kind of, it's that facing a lot of regulations, different restrictions, it's much more tightly regulated. What are some of those challenge as a result, what are some of those challenges that are happening in the healthcare supply chain, that it's just kind of really bogging shippers down?
Yeah, so you can think about the different type of shipment, right? Clinic, consumers, hospitals, large bulk. Each one of those has its own challenges. Uh, for example, one of our customers, Aero Logistics, out of Georgia, they've been using our tool in the beginning for only monitoring the different temperature while the truck moves. And then what they found out is that from a time and motion perspective, there's much more added value. And you actually in one of your podcasts you mentioned that you should automate whatever you don't like, right? And picking and sorting and receiving. The receiving side is the highest turnout job in every supply chain area. Average was about 3 to 4 months last time I watched it on in the retail actually industry. I don't know in the other industries. I didn't read it, but But in aero logistics, what they found out is that they can use our time and motion application that is coming with all of our IoT. And so before the truck arrives, they would know, hey, the truck is going to arrive in about 25 minutes. And so, as you know, when the truck is being unloaded to the dock, if it's exposed to high ambient temperature, Georgia, summer, right? Texas, even winter. And so that's a high risk. And you would like to take it as, as soon as it being dropped on the dock. And again, as I mentioned before, people wants to do the right thing. You just need to tell them what to do. If you're in the middle, if the team is in the middle of a big, large bulk of picks, they may not be able to be allocated to the dock because the picks are also frozen and refrigerated, right? And you cannot just leave it. And so if you knew that in 25 minutes it's coming and you load it into your time and motion application on the warehouse management tool and it's all integrated, guess what? The harmony comes in. You will then be allocated to wait for the truck only about 30 seconds because the truck is arriving. You will then, they will unload it, you will pick it, you will then store it, and it's all harmony. And so you can automate that experience for the people. So they are being optimized and not just standing still or too late to pick up something that is run.
I kinda like that because in a perfect world, in my brain, if you have, like, 5 people that are working on picking the next shipment and then kind of and you know that that truck is coming in, well, they're just gonna go off what's on their handheld. They're not necessarily gonna, wander around the warehouse looking for the next load. They're just gonna say, "Okay, well, next I have to go next I'm just gonna go unload this truck." And that way, I feel like you could almost, like, as it's coming, you could stagger people off finishing up that shipment and then stagger people on to unloading this truck. So that way, when the truck pulls up, you have at least one person there waiting, getting the paperwork started, opening up the shipment and starting to unload it. And then probably as they're like 2 pallets in, more people are coming. And then you get that help to, get it off the truck and then into the warehouse faster. So that way it's not just sitting at the dock door, being subject to possibly freezing temperatures if you're up in the Northeast in wintertime, or, the delight that is the Southwest desert in the summer, where, 100 degrees is nothing for them. They'll literally just melt pavement. That's my favorite type of weather.
I totally agree. So when with bulk, though, those are the areas. But if you think about clinics, we have a lot of customers that are shipping into clinics, and there's a lot of what they call reship, right? Now, a reship could happen because the customer or the clinic just say, "Hey, we never got it." It was shipped to a wrong clinic, never arrived, evaporated, or it could be that it arrived, and guess what? The temperature excursion happened. No one acted in real time on it, and so now you need to reship it. If you think about that, and you think about saving lives, it's also catered to clients, patients. If it's a cancer clinic and people are actually scheduled to come in, and suddenly they don't have the medicine, that could be horrible, right? And so the idea for this clinic type on minimizing the reship is not even dollars, it's lives, and it's catered to the patient. And the ability to actually say, hey, it was for some reason that specific shipment was rerouted, right, to Boston instead of Missouri, you will be able to catch and reroute back to the target. As soon as you have automation around routes that you loaded, and then any reroute offset that the system will see.
Yeah, I feel like that's also kind of handy because if you see that, like, oh, we accidentally sent this shipment up to Boston, how fast can we get another one out to the clinic in California or Missouri or wherever? It kind of says, okay, well, we'll skip Boston's next one, but in the meantime, we'll still make sure everybody's whole, even if that means we just have to express ship one because, it needs to be there. Because again, it's medication. It's not like it's something um, that you can just kinda say like, "Nah, it'll be okay tomorrow," like a pair of jeans, you know? And I think that that is, like, the really important part, because like you said, it's people's lives, and that way, if, patient is coming into your clinic and you're out of the drug that they have, you can call them and say, "Hey, you need to go to clinic B instead," because that way, you know you're not gonna come here for nothing. And you can go maybe the clinic's 10 minutes farther away. So if you're okay with that, then you can get your medication there versus here. Sorry about it. But you know, that way it's just kind of you're not wasting anyone's time and you're not like nobody's really getting mad in theory.
Absolutely. And, we're talking about healthcare. There's something between healthcare and food that people do not think about it this way. But the CDC is actually putting their foot down on it, and that's over the counter drugs. So the drugs that you can buy, you know, the Pepto-Bismol, the Advil, all of those, if they're being exposed to extreme temperature, both low and high, that's bad, right? And so on the label, all of them are talking about 77 MKT, mean kinetic temperature, and um, telling you the truth. Not a lot of both shippers, 3PLs, and manufacturers, as well as grocers, were actually taking temperature on those. And so recently we saw a high pickup on ability to trace and track temperature, at least on a random places to approve routes, right? So you don't need to do it on every case, but if you do it on 5 cases a week on this route, 5 cases a week on that route, you then approve the routes, and because you don't have a reefer on those, and also if you store them high on the warehouse, guess what happened there, right? In Texas and in Georgia, and as well as you said, on the northern atmosphere, it's the same thing, just on the opposite, on the freezing temperature. And the efficacy of those, how many times you took an Advil, you had a headache and it didn't work, and you just ask yourself, okay, is it a headache that doesn't is not curable? The Advil has been exposed to high temperature. Now I'm actually thinking about when I take it, when I could.
Um, that is crazy and that is crazy impressive because if I'm sitting there and I am the maker of Advil and I say, "Okay, I know that this shipment is going to Maine in December," then I think I could probably put something in my system because for the most part, and when you in receiving warehouses, it tells you like the picker thing. I know there's a fancier word for it, but I don't remember at this moment in time. So I'm gonna say the picker thing. The picker thing goes and says, okay, you put it in this spot because you could probably put in those regulations of it can't be on the top shelf. It has to be ground floor or like nothing above rack two. Um, and same in the winter time or the summertime, like, hey, it needs to not be at the top because you can build those kind of parameters in. Then once again, reducing human error, what we had talked about earlier.
And you spoke at the beginning about IoT and why I joined SmartSense, et cetera. It's the IoT today, the market itself is very, very fragmented, very fragmented. So my vision when I joined was that SmartSense, we are great at developing sensors. Don't get me wrong, but we can work with other sensors, and we can become the IoT. If you already bought sensors that are Bluetooth, Zigbee, LoRa, we can actually read them and still become your backbone for time and motion and temperature. And we started with that. We actually reach out to some competitors, and we created what we call co-opetition, specifically with ThermoWorks on the food side and a few others. And then we've been requested by our customers to build something specifically for those routes that are so critical for both the medicine and the food. But they ask us to do something that is very small and eco-friendly. And so I have to show you that we came up with a
That's so cool.
credit card size, temperature, route, impact, and monitoring, and light as well. And so it has a gyro inside. So if the truck hits something, you can actually then use your insurance. Because in the old days, if you have even an appliance, you have an appliance, the truck hits the curb, you got a dent, the driver doesn't know, go deliver the appliance. The customer called the support, you need to give them something, but you cannot use insurance because you don't know where it happened. And so with that, you will know where it happened, you will know the temperature, you will know the route, you know where the truck is. And so we just released that last November, and we're very, very proud of that new technology that we're coming to market with. We call it Voyage, voyage, voyage,
I
voyage with my American accents. Voyage.
I absolutely love that, especially from, like you said, an insurance perspective. Your insurance agent isn't gonna just be like, "Oh, it got damaged, say less, here's a pile of money." They're gonna be like, "Mm, but where did it actually get damaged?" And that way, if you can prove like, "Oh, there was an accident, there was a tip, there was something in the driving of it," that's not great for the carrier's insurance, but that's them problem, not a you problem. That way you can say, "Hey, here's where it got damaged." Then then that way they can do their insurance talk and figure out who's gonna pay what, um, which is something that I would rather never have to be a part of in my entire life because that is a very horrible conversation.
A lot of paperwork as well. Yeah.
So much paperwork. I really like that first of all, that you guys have that really impressive technology. It's so tiny too, because I feel like, the one of the things to think of is you can't if you have a truckload full of sensors or other things, they can't really be heavy and bulky because that cuts into actual shippable space. But the one thing you said, excuse me, that I really, really like is that you can kind of absorb anyone's sensors of like, hey, do you want to know, like, do you have 10 different brands of sensors? Instead of using 10 different systems, just roll them all up into ours and we got you. And I like that you just kind of came in and said, it doesn't have to be this hard.
We're making it as simple as possible. By the way, we know, supply chain, etc. There's so many people, so many nodes, so many complexities that if you try to cater to everything and you become so complex, the adoption will be minimum, and then the value, everyone will export everything to Excel again, right? And so the idea is, in order to get the adoption, it needs to be simple, right? It needs to be simple. Everyone can use it. You throw it into, the case. Doesn't need to be where in the case. You just throw it. It's part of the picking process. You say random every 10th case, you drop it in, and then the system just tells you validated, not validated, where was it, where the exclusion happened. By the way, if you have something really expensive, even a meat pallet that costs $1,500 from the uh, manufacturing slaughterhouse manufacturing, or to the grocer, you throw that in, and if the reefer is off, it will actually then tell you, "Hey, please call Joanne, to turn on the Thermo King reefer in the back. Something happened and it stopped." And you can actually save the pallet, right?
That isn't There's been some really cool technology that has come out around kind of that analytics part of things, where, like, it'll let you know if there was a stop or if the reefer wasn't running continuous or if there was a reefer breakdown, because a lot of times, again, it's that human error component of you go to set the temperature on your reefer, you forget to hit continuous, and it just cools to that temperature and stops, cools to that temperature and stops instead of keeping it running the whole time, and there are some loads that do need the cools and stops, but for those that are continuous, you need the continuous.
And for those scenarios, you need the prescriptive actions, because just said, "Hey, the temperature is not good." You go in and you say, "Oh, it's set correct." But if you say, "Hey, please go in and set it up as continuous," that's all you need to do, because we see that the engine, the machine learning algorithm learn that, hey, it has spikes. Right? It has spikes, and those spikes are a behavior of a wrong configuration. You can then ask Joanne to go in and just reset it, right? And so it's easy. Also, new truckers can learn faster because they actually prescribe to you what to do.
Yeah, I 1,000% love that. Speaking of other things that I love, we have come to my favorite question of the day, and it might be the hardest question that you're asked all day, so brace yourself, guy. Is cereal considered a soup?
Uh, well, cereal. I would say cereal itself is a snack,
Okay.
but if you take the snack,
Mhm.
you pour milk, or if you boil hot it will
Yeah.
become a soup. Could be a hot soup, could be a cold soup, could be not tasty soup. But it's, you know what? It's the same question. Tortilla flour. Is that a sandwich? No. But if you put it as a quesadilla, is
Mm.
quesadilla a sandwich? Right?
I mean, on our other show we had is a hot dog a sandwich, and so it's a very similar thing, and it always ends up into just a chaotic discussion, because it's a hot dog, you know, and cereal is like it's just its own thing. Like they're in different aisles of the grocery store. With that being said, I'm not as much of a cereal super, you know, but I'm not a big fan of soup, so but I love cereal, so that's why I'm like, obviously, they're 2 different things.
I would agree with you with that, but you can make one from the other.
You can't, I can see both sides. However, the not cereal soup is my preferred side of the argument to be on.
I agree with that. What about the hot dog though?
It's not a sandwich, it's a thing,
Okay,
it's its own thing. Because
it's
if you
um,
go into a deli, you're not gonna see a sandwich on the board, you know?
agree with you on that one.
So, I am much more strongly convinced on that one, I will not be moved. So, Guy, if anyone has questions on your hot dog sandwich, cereal soup, or if they have questions about IoT devices and kind of automating what they hate in their supply chain, where can they find you outside the show?
Either look at me on LinkedIn, Guy Yahya, Yehiav. That's a tough one, but it's the only one. Or easier, just go to smartsense.co, not .com, .co, smartsense.co, and there's actually a lot of information, and you can just connect with us through that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.